call to order, 7 p.m. Wednesday, April 9th. Whether you're joining us in person or I appreciate taking the time to be here today. We will begin with introductions, names, positions, pronouns. Question of the day. My request is, what is your favorite thing to do in the sun? I would say the morning when it's like cool but still sunny, probably walk. Right. Oh, sorry, I'm Talib Lopez Duval. Seat and speak.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ravi Pella, ASUO Chief of Staff and subbing in for Vice President Paku, who is not feeling well. And my favorite thing to do in the sun is probably play frisbee.
Hi, my name is Marisol Peters. I use she, her pronouns, and I am Senate CO2 PFC. And I like to read in the sun. I got to read today.
Hello, everybody. Andy Lopez, QC, Senate Seat 3, and my favorite thing during the sun, probably just staying out with friends, throwing a ball around, doing anything in the sun.
My name is Summer Mohammed, QC Senate 04, and I like.
Stayed with us as you guys use he and pronouns and probably pick the ball.
My name is Alma Father, CFC Senate Seat 6. My favorite thing to do in the sun is go sailing.
Hayden Meyer, Senate Seat 9, he and pronouns, and my favorite thing to do in the sun is probably go for a run.
Hi everybody, my name is Priscilla Moreno. I use she, her pronouns. I'm Senate 10, DFC, and Senate Treasurer, and I also like running when it's sunny.
Hi guys, my name is Jess Fisher. I use any pronouns. I'm Senate 11. I love playing spike ball in the summer. Hello everybody, I'm Rachel Lewis. She, her pronouns, Senate Seat 12. My favorite thing to do in the sun is to take a nap.
Hello, everybody. My name is Drew Ramirez-Pineda. I use she, her pronouns, and my favorite thing to do in the sun is also take a nap and just be outside.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joanne Rooms, Senate Seat 15, she, her pronouns, and my favorite thing to do in the sun is swim volleyball, particularly sand volleyball.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bella Esbeth, she, her pronouns, Senate Seat 16, and academic chair. And my favorite thing to do in the sun is also take a nap, but in my hammock.
Everyone, I'm Bill Paxton,
Senate Seat 17, and my favorite thing to do in the sun is play tennis.
Hey squad, happy Wednesday. Thank you all for being here. Liv Screw, Senate Seat 18, she, her pronouns. My favorite thing to do in the sun. Frolic with friends. Can't think of anything better right now.
Good evening, everyone. Jamie Dillon, Senate Seat 19, and my favorite thing to do in the sun is probably take the dogs on a walk.
Hello, my name is Erin Lindemann. I am Senate Seat 20, she, her pronouns. It's warm enough. I like to go swimming in the sun.
Hey everyone, my name is Jane. Senate Seat 21 for undecided majors, any pronouns. I don't know. Favorite thing to the sun. Anything that makes the My Neighbor Totoro theme song come into my head.
Hi, I'm Andrew Charm, he, him pronouns, Senate Seat 22, representing graduate students in CAS and the College of Design. My favorite thing to do in the sun is probably nap, but conscious thing to do would be to read.
Zoe Jacobson Cox, I'm Senate Seat 24, she, her pronouns, and I really like to tan in the sun.
Hi guys, I'm Sierra. I'm the clerk, and my favorite thing to do in the sun is golf. Hi everyone, my name is Terry Gary. I am the Senate Deputy Speaker, PSC Chair, and Senate Seat 1. I use she, her pronouns, and my favorite thing to do in the sun is probably just go sit out by a lake or a river and just chill if you catch my drift. And just so we haven't noticed yet, my computer is dead, working on it. The agenda will be up there shortly. Thank you.
Delightful. Okay. Do you have anyone in the line? Senator Williams.
The University of Oregon is located on Calapooya Aliki, the traditional indigenous homeland of the Calapooya people. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Calapooya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. Today, Calapooya descendants are primarily citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indian. They continue to make important contributions to their communities, to the UO, to the lands now known as Oregon, and to the world. In following the Indigenous Protocol of acknowledging the original people of the land we occupy, we also extend our respects to the 9 federally recognized Indigenous nations of Oregon, the Burns Paiute Tribe, the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Blue Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians, the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, the Coquille Indian Tribe, the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua, Tribe of Indians, and the Klamath Tribes. We express our respects to the many more tribes who have ancestral connections to the territory, including the Chinook Indian Nation and the Fort McDermott Paiute and Shoshone tribes, as well as to all other displaced indigenous people called Oregon.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second, Screw.
Motion made by Dylan, seconded Scrum. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Other? Thank you, Senator Williams. I'd also like to remind senators today, needing this reminder when folks are presenting, please close your laptops. Disengage from sometimes. And additionally, when you're looking at this, just check the engagement before you ask us information. Great. Do we have anyone for announcements today? Come on up.
Hey everyone, happy week 2. We're gonna start off our Osprey announcement. Oh my gosh, it's back with some with some legislative updates. First, we have some news on our wildlife crossings campaign. Every year, thousands of animals attempt to cross Oregon's highways, often with deadly consequences. Roads and development have fragmented habitats, cutting wildlife off from the food, water, and migration routes they need to survive. We've been working with a broad coalition to change that by advocating for wildlife crossings, safe passages that allow animals to move freely and reconnect with the landscapes they call home. Today, the Oregon House took a major step forward by passing House Bill 2978 with overwhelming bipartisan support, voting 53-3 in favor of it. Very exciting. Between 2016 and 2023, the state of Oregon wasted more than 800,000 tons of food annually, even as 1 in 8 Oregonians struggle with food insecurity. Yesterday, the Oregon House Committee on Climate, Energy, and Environment advanced House Bill 3018 with a vote of 7-4. So it's now going to the Ways and Means Committee, which is very exciting. The bill would be a crucial step in tackling Oregon's growing food waste problem. I'll demonstrate support for this issue by getting students to call Rep. Lively's office last Thursday, the day of the work session for the bill, and asked them to support the bill.
Awesome. Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. My name is Sam, I'm the chapter chair of Osprey students. This week we launched a recruitment drive. So over the past week, we scheduled class reps and over 60 classes on campus and identified over 350 people interested in getting involved with our campaigns. We've also been holding our first campaign meetings for the campaigns for beds to protect our oceans, make textbooks affordable and safe for bees. We're also planning some major events from Oregon's Oceans Lobby Day in Salem, to an OER, which is Open Educational Resources panel on campus, and an Oregon Native Bee Day celebration, a lot of other things as well. And last week I wanted to highlight, we had a table, I know some of y'all saw, of a life-size phone booth where we were calling senators to urge them to support the Affordable Textbook Act, where we made over 50 calls. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Abigail. So this term, Osprey is launching our campaign to save the bees, and we're also going to extend this with our canvas offices in Oregon throughout the summer. So we're running this campaign because our bees are in crisis. Nearly 40% of honeybees were lost last year, And beyond honeybees, 1 in 4 wild bee species is at risk of extinction. These pollinators are vital to 90% of wild flowering plants all over the nation. And without bees, we know our ecosystems would unravel. Pollinator-dependent plants would decline, jeopardizing entire food webs. I'm sure a lot of you like coffee in the mornings. That's thanks to our bees. But millions of bees continue to die each year due to pesticides, habitat loss, climate change, and disease. We know that pesticides is something we can tackle right away. So neonicotinoids is one of the most harmful impacts or harmful pesticides on our pollinators. And they're disrupting bees' nervous systems, impairing their ability to forage, and leading to just total colony collapse. So we're getting our Oregon lawmakers to restrict the everyday sale of these neonics. And we know that Augsburg students is the group to mobilize and get our Oregon senators and legislatures on our side. Eugene was actually the first city in the nation to ban bee-killing pesticides. So we really want to get all of our Augsburg students and support on campus to organize around this and replicate Eugene's success nationwide. Thank you.
All right, do we have anybody else for announcement? Okay. Do we have anyone for public forum? Okay, I will yield to the president.
Hi, everyone. I have 2 different things that I will be talking to you guys about today. So the first thing is if you all close your computers and look at the paper right in front of you, that is thanks to Robbie, who put this together for you all, because a lot of the things I'm going to say is going to be a lot of jargon. And so I'm going to try to simplify it, but if you want a lot more details, you can go ahead and check the page after I tell you all what's going on. So myself and the MSA president, Mohammed, have been working really closely together for the past 2 weeks because of the things that have been going on campus. I'm sure you all know that there have been 4 students who have had their visas revoked. Mohammed has been very amazing to work with throughout this process. Me and him have been in contact with the first student, and I've been able to talk to them, make sure they're okay, and figure out what they need. However, now that the 3 others have gotten their visas revoked, I found myself in a position where I felt like ASUO needs to do something to help, and we're here and we're able to provide students something, why not do it? So I talked with Angela Chong, who's the vice president of Student Life, and we started figuring out a way where we can help these students financially, because the issue is the government is doing this and not letting the students know. So there's not much that the university can do in terms of the visas themselves, but we can do something by providing them financial support. If you guys don't know this, an immigration case can be $20,000 for almost the entire case. Now imagine that. Imagine being a student, an international student who's here, already paying for school, paying for your food, paying for everything, and on top of that, $20,000 to fight for your right to stay in the country and finish your education. So thanks to a conversation Tariq, Hunter, and I had with Angela yesterday, we kind of started figuring out a solution. So first, we were thinking of using surplus, but I was a little bit worried about taking the sum of money that you see on the page, which is $150,000 from surplus, and I know that students also need it for a lot of the events that they have on campus that help students sometimes forget all of the difficult things that are going on. So you guys might not know this, but ASUO has something called the Credit Reserve. Now, every single year, 5% of the IP is taken and is put into this account, and it's something called an emergency account. So think of, for example, if enrollment were to not be what we projected and it falls short, you guys, or whoever the president is next year, can write a request to President Schultz to then use that emergency money to make up anything that was missed from things like enrollment being wrong or anything else. Now, okay, thank you. Now, the current prudent reserve is around $299,000 over the 5%. We have a little bit of money to play with. So right now, I have a paper in front of you where I want to request $150,000 out of the prudent reserve and put that into this thing that Angela, Kevin, who is general counsel, and I are working on. So as you all know, we have something called student legal services. We've already been in contact with them and the attorney who's in student legal services. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to amend the contracts and add in it an immigration firm or an immigration attorney on retainer. This will provide students with the financial support for potentially their entire case. Pretty much all of the $20,000 being covered by ASUO for their to help them in general. So for me to do this, Senate does have to approve me sending the written request to President Schultz in order to get access to that money. The reason why I'm doing it today is because we're trying to do it ASAP. Kevin, at the moment, is currently talking to different immigration firms to figure out which one we're going to work with. Angela and Becky have been already working with Student Legal Services to get this process started. So everything has already started. We just need the money. And then from then on, we're going to start contacting the attorneys. So I'm going to read you guys the request I have because I don't want to send it without all of you guys hearing what is in the letter. And if I said anything, anybody, Hunter or Tuli and Robbie, let me know if I missed anything. But give me just one moment to bring up. Okay, here's what I said. Dear President Schultz, on behalf of the Associated Students of the University of Oregon, I'm writing to formally request up to $150,000 from the Prudent Reserve to support international students facing urgent legal challenges. As outlined in the incidental fee authorization policy, the Prudent Reserve shall be created at the beginning of the fiscal year at level equal to at least 5% of the current fiscal year's total incidental fee budget to ensure against shortfalls due to under-realized enrollment and or unforeseen contingencies. Currently, the Prudent Reserve exceeds the 5% requirement by approximately $299,000. We're requesting a portion of that excess, up to $150,000, to assist international students who are at risk of losing their legal status in the United States. This request falls under the policy provision that allows the fund to be used for emergency, budgetary shortfalls, or other compelling prudent fiscal actions. We believe the situation qualifies as the latter. As of today, 4 international students at the University of Oregon have had their visas revoked. This is not only deeply distressing for those students, but also raises concerns across the international student community who already face immense financial and emotional stress while studying far from home. ASUO is actively working with the Vice President of Student Life, Angela Chong, and General Counsel Kevin Reed to establish a contract with an immigration law firm to provide these students with essential legal services. Our hope is that the $150,000 will cover these legal fees through the end of July. International students contribute immeasurably to the intellectual, cultural, and economic fabric of our campus. In addition to the cost of tuition, housing, food, and textbooks, these students now face unexpected and unaffordable legal expenses. As their student government, it is our responsibility to step up in moments of crisis, and this is that moment. With your support, we can use this portion of the Prudent Reserve to change lives and ensure these students have a fair opportunity to defend their right to study at our university. We appreciate your consideration and support in this urgent matter. Now, one more detail that I'm going to give you all is, like you've heard, the $150,000 is hopefully going to cover these students' legal fees through the end of July. I kind of did that intentionally because I don't need to explain to you guys, you already know how the ASUO financial budget works, but our kind of fiscal year ends in July. And this gives, which I'll be working with the next president, the opportunity for the next president, if needed, to do essentially the same thing. Because the Prudent Reserve, like we said, is every year 5% of the budget. And we intentionally left some of the excess money so that it can be used if necessary. The reason why I'm not requesting all of the $299,000 is because as of right now, it's only 4 and we don't really know how many more students. And if we pull that much money and hopefully not that many students need it, then that's just money that went to waste that could have been used for emergencies. Does anyone have any questions?
So when the 150,000 is pulled from the Prudent Reserve, is it put into any other like kind of ledger, or is it directly contracted between the administration and the lawyers?
So that is currently what I'm working on because I had that question too. I'm pretty sure it doesn't go straight, and I'm going to give Robbie that as well. I'm pretty sure it doesn't go straight to the exec budget or anything because it gets so back into surplus. The Prudent Reserve specifically said that you need to have a reason, and so I think it would go straight to whatever contract we're going to do. And I forgot to tell you guys, there are 2 options for this contract. Option 1 is we just do a new contract between the university and the immigration firm. Option 2 is we go through Student Legal Services. When I was meeting with Angela yesterday, I said that I would rather do the thing that's fastest to get the students the money first. However, if they're both the same amount of time, we're going to go through Student Legal Services, but that requires CFC to meet and approve it since it would be a contract. So that kind of, I hope that answered your question. I'm pretty sure it's just straight between the university and the contract, and that's where the money would go. Not like kind of through one of our line items or ledger or any of that.
Sounds good, thank you.
Probably if I said anything.
I don't have any questions, I guess, about like the request, but just like formally, is this like a motion that we would be making?
Yeah, I have the motion.
Okay, perfect.
I was just.
We don't speak of it as well.
I just want to make another note that this is precisely what the group reserve should be used for. This is an emergency situation. And from our conversation yesterday, like Nadia said, it was important to ensure that we were able to still serve student organizations at the same time. And so, yeah, I appreciate it. I'm going to make a motion if there's any other discussion. I move to recommend authorize spending from the prudent reserve in the amount of $150,000 for the purpose of emergency student legal support.
Second, Dylan.
Motion made by Lopez Duval, seconded Dylan. Is there any discussion? Senator Strong.
Take up time, but I do want to say thank you for putting in the work for doing this. I think this is like Malik was saying, it's exactly what this is here for. I think this fits the theme of this year of how much we all have really tried to just support student orgs, or not just student orgs, but students in general. And you are fulfilling your duty in doing that. And I appreciate you going above and beyond to really make sure that this is cared for and tailored to, and this is something that the student government is actually putting action towards. So, yeah, thank you on behalf of all of Senate for doing so and bringing this in such an urgent time. Thank you. I yield.
Any other discussion? Vote. Hughes.
Aye.
Lopez. Aye. Muhammad.
Aye.
Vote. Aye. Potter.
Aye.
Myers.
Aye.
Moreno.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Withers.
Aye.
Ramirez Pineda.
Aye.
Wu.
Aye.
Esbeth. Pactaluna.
Aye.
Scrub.
Aye.
Dillon.
Aye.
Ludeman.
Aye.
Bowman.
Aye.
Ducharme.
Aye.
Jenkins Hiscox.
Aye.
Garrity. I say aye as well. The motion is.
So now the next step is I'm going to be sending an email to Schultz today, just immediately after the Senate. I will say I'm feeling pretty hopeful because I already had Angela text him to just make sure that this won't waste my time, because I didn't want to do this and then waste time instead of just asking for surplus. There's just two other quick things I want to mention before I'm done. So in light of the fact that 4 international students have had their visa revoked, there's a few things that I want to say that me and not just Mohammed, but just Ahmed and other people have been discussing. Now, I know that a lot of people want to help because they feel the need to, and it's a really good thing, and you should be helping. But there's a difference between helping and harming the students, even when you have the right intentions. The most important thing right now is that the student's identity is confidential. That is the number one thing that we need to do. That is why, so far out of everyone at ASUO, when the minute I found out, well, the very first student I actually knew, and so they reached out to me, and my team knows I didn't tell a single one of them, because that is what it means to actually help and support these students. If you know one of those students, keep their name out of your mouth, please, because there's multiple things that are going wrong with these. It's either the student is forced to leave within 15 days, or if the student, for example, has applied for a green card, they're actually legally allowed to stay in the United States up until the case is done. That does not prevent ICE from coming on campus and taking them though. And that's the problem. And so when there's rallies and protests and all these other things going on, which I understand where it's coming from, and obviously I support freedom of speech, I also want to make sure that when we are doing something, we're doing it with the intention of helping the students and not with the intention of making us look good or feeling like we're on the right campus. That is not what activism or anything should be for. It should be actively helping the students themselves and thinking about that first. The other thing I want to quickly talk about, I wasn't really going to talk about it at Senate today, but in the conversation I had with Mohammed, it kind of made me think that I want to. And this isn't an attack to anybody. I've heard this throughout the election process, but it's been a little frustrating to me to hear some things being said about the lack of work that exec does, or that it's just t-shirt drops. This is so incredibly disrespectful to my team, because if any of you just took a second and actually talked to, some of them are right here, for example, Daphne and Hunter and Madison have put in so much work to have really good things for students, they've been doing that all year. And I'm not normally one that speaks up about criticism. I like criticism, I will take criticism any day. Anybody who knows me knows this, I love criticism. However, when I feel like it's coming from the wrong place or it's unjust, because I feel like people aren't actually coming up to the people in the executive branch and actively asking them what's going on, I feel like as their president, I have to speak up. So please, if you feel like exec isn't doing something, come up. I would love to hear it. I would love to fix it and I would love to move forward. But to say that all we ever do is, for example, like silly little fun events for students, it's just not correct. You just saw something that I've been working on for weeks. And there's reasons why sometimes things are confidential, like the thing I'm working on that I just told you guys about now because I can. We lobby on behalf of all students in DC. We are lobbying at the state level. I've constantly met with administration to make sure that students are feeling safe. We have constantly had events about basic needs. Our entire advocacy department is right now working on Who Know Your Rights event for activists and for immigration, and multiple groups are actively working with them on that. And so, listen, you can say whatever you want about me, but don't say anything about my team that's not true, because I'm not going to let that stand. So please, if you have something about exec, first go ask the team, then say whatever you like, and we will listen to your criticism and we will take it. And that's all I can say.
Thank you, Madam President. Do we have anybody else for public forum? Okay, then we will move into financial business. The surplus number has not updated since last week. Subs has not processed for some of the items, so I will send the most updated number that I have as soon as they're able to get a hold of the first is a transfer request from Cultura Philippines. Anyone here to speak?
Hello, everybody. I am Gio Ramirez. I am the financial coordinator for Cultura Filipinas. This is my first time in the Senate hearing, so please bear with me. We are requesting to transfer a total of $4,171.52 to spring events from the fall events and winter events line. We plan to move $1,079.32 from fall events and $3,092.20 from winter events. These will cover our expenses for PCN, like costumes for our performers, decor for the tables and the stage, and printed promotional material.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thanks for being with us tonight. Does anyone have any questions about this request? Senator Withers.
I make motion. I move to transfer funds within Group Cultura Filipinas Case 049I in the amount of $1,079 from fall events to spring events and $3,092 from winter events to spring events for a total of $4,172.
Motion made by Withers, seconded by Ramirez. Is there any discussion? Peters.
Aye.
Muhammad.
Aye.
Bo.
Aye.
Potter.
Aye.
Meyer.
Aye.
Loretta.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Withers.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Wu. Esbeck. Kaluna. Stroh.
Aye.
Dillon.
Aye.
Ludeman.
Aye.
Bauman.
Aye.
Ducharme.
Aye.
Jenkins Hiscox.
Aye.
Garrity.
Aye.
And I say aye as well. First surplus request is from Women in Law. You can take it off if it's easier.
I think that's easier.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't know, is that loud enough?
No,
I don't know. I can just talk loud too. I'm Lulu Zeitler. On behalf of Women in Law, we're requesting surplus funds for a panel event that we're hosting. We're gonna have a total of 4 panelists. One is a judge, the other
is a current law student in her second year, and then an attorney, and Joan Rockland, who's a professor at the UO Law School. And the event supports our missions and goals of providing our members with information, resources, and community needed to succeed in and outside of the legal field. There are 2 line items just in case. But the first is Women in Law panel, specifically the ENU Ballroom Reservation, which is approximately $504. We've been in conversation with them over the past few weeks. And then the other is for food, because we're going to have catering. Our catering waiver has already been approved, but we're going to do Costco pizzas. So that is where the remaining approximately 100, but a little bit less than that is in this request for a total of $600.
Okay, wonderful. That sounds awesome. It sounds like a great event. We'll go over here and then I do one thing I want to say first, and my colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong. But would it make more sense to do more general line item for this, like events line items? For the room. Does that make sense? Did that work for you?
Yeah, no, that's what I did initially, and then there were lots of options, and then I was like,
okay, perfect. When whoever makes the motion, if you just do an events line item, I think that would work best. For Mira's Panetta and then somebody.
I was gonna go ahead and make the motion. So I move to authorize spending from surplus to group Women in Law, OS number OS 346, in the amount of $600 to, would it be new line item? To new line item events.
Second at Esbeck.
Motion made by Ramirez Panetta, second by Senator Lubin. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Other? Motion's done. Have a great event. Alrighty, our next surplus request is Green Business Initiative. Speak on that request, Green Business Initiative.
They're not there. I move to table the request from Green Business Initiative.
Motion made by Ruben, second by Peters. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Other? Motion is adopted. The request is tabled. Philosophical Association at UF. Is anyone here to speak on that?
Thanks for your time. We're here to ask for $1,500 for a spring conference we're throwing. It's going to take place in the week of May 13th on May 17th. We're going to have students from universities around the area, Oregon State, University of Washington, Pacific Lutheran, students from their undergraduate philosophy clubs and their departments. They come out, present their work, and kind of just creates a community for the area. It's good for professional networking. $1,500 will be for the catering we're going to need. We're expecting to have about the same amount of people as Oregon State did at their conference last year, and they had 60 to 70 people. And so, given that being the case, we're asking for $1,500 for the catering, for any kind of printing materials we're going to need, and also for promotional T-shirts we're going to give out.
Awesome. Sounds like an exciting. Is there any questions on this request? Peters.
Break down that $1,500 for us between the catering and the T-shirts and printing.
Yeah, so we're working off of estimates, and our estimates for the catering, we're looking at $1,000. And then for promotional material, we're looking at $200, given that we want to make posters to put up around campus. We want to be able to print the various things that we want to send out to universities as well. We've already put out a call for papers, but we like to send out a physical one a week or two before. And for the T-shirts, we're looking at making about 60, and we've done up a silly kind of meme with one of the philosophy professors, and it shouldn't be expensive. We're going to go through one of the assigned vendors here. The one that we're kind of iffy on is the catering. given we're looking at between like, oh, do we want cafe? Yeah, do we want banh mi? And so we're talking about using that $1,000 that we get for catering as a gauge for what kind of catering we want to get versus the other way around.
So, and then can you just remind me the expected attendance?
Yeah, we're looking at a minimum 60 people.
Awesome, thank you, AU.
Senator Fletcher.
That's great. Thanks for being here. I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion. I move to authorize funding from surplus to Group Philosophical Association at UO, OS 339I, in the amount of $1,500 to new line item name Spring Philosophy Conference.
Second, Meredith Panetta.
Motion made by Fisher, seconded by Meredith. Is there any discussion? Vote. Peters.
Aye.
Lopez.
Aye.
Muhammad.
Aye.
Bone.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Meyer.
Aye.
Marina.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Rivers.
Aye.
Ramirez Pineda.
Aye.
Wu.
Aye.
Esbeth. Acton. Scrub. Bill.
Aye.
Lou.
Aye.
Founder. Ducharme.
Aye.
Jenkins Hiscox. Garrett.
Aye.
I say aye as well. The motion is adopted. Okay, the next request is from Pioneer Student Association.
Hello everyone, I'm actually have some slides that I sent to the vice president. So there's actually two requests today, but I combined both of the details onto the slides. Next page, please. Just scrolling. Oh, okay. Okay. So just like a brief introduction of who we are, in case you guys are not familiar with who we are. We're the Tony Student Association, and our main goals are to just promote Tony's culture and welcoming environment for anybody who likes to come, and a collaborative environment, as well as just fostering close relationship and definitely educate a Tony's culture. So there's two requests. First, we have our like merch, stickers, and recruitment retention requests, and our second one will be our Tama Night event with performer and decorations request. So the first breakdown is the total amount is $1,760. Merchandise we're requesting the breakdown of $460. It says 46 hoodies, but there's like a correction on the forms to be 44 hoodies. And expected attendance for that meeting is 50, and it's going to be on a week 6 meeting. And our current code is $456.67, but we're just writing $460 for some like small cushion errors. And all the 9-5 numbers for the students will be provided to the SOFS for like their $50 like limit that they have, and those are just like our design of our hoodies on there. And our recruitment session, we're doing $1,000 just for purchasing materials for events and our event supplies like markings, all of that things, and prepackaged snacks for our members who attend the meetings. And lastly, we have stickers that are designed for us, and we're requesting $300 for that. There'll be 100 stickers in total, and they're going to be distributed to our members with also again with their like $50 limit, and that's all their 9 packs going to be sent to the SOFS for the eligibility. So our second request is for our biggest Tama Night event, which is a total of $17,820. It's going to be on May 16th in the EMU ballroom from 6 to 8. One of the biggest costs is our performance sundial. The logistics were a little bit delayed than we would like to, given the fact that there are visa requirements for international performers that we didn't account for, that their visa takes 6 months to come down for like US working visas, which is why we've been kind of scrambling and finally getting a US based performer based in LA. And they're called Sundial. They're about like 300K followers on Instagram. They're mostly singing to the Asian American community, and we're very excited to have them. And our expected attendance for this event will be like 300 students, with open to general and students as well. That cost of $9,000 will include performance, transportation, accommodation, and another thing will be our forward decoration. The purpose for that is just to enhance quality of the event to be more professional, as well as it suits our theme of like lanterns and lights that we have based on a true location in Taiwan. And just some additional information is that ticketing will be $5 for this event, and yeah, that's it. And just lastly, for some requests as to why we're doing this, it's just that we have a big growth in event attendance, like definitely through winter term and fall term, and we're purchasing more hoodies because we didn't think there'd be so many, like this many attendance than with last year's budget, and we're actually are just performing with like a tier 4 level, but given that we're only a tier 3 organization here. Thank you.
Excellent slideshow. Do we have any questions about this request? Either one? Senator Wu.
Hi, thanks for coming. Thanks for the lovely slideshow. I love all the cats. For the first request, I saw the note from SOFs. Did you want to adjust the amount for the 46 or the 44 ODs, or did you just want to keep the same?
I remember the only thing it just said it was adjusted to 44 already, so I think we can just keep it at that.
Okay, sounds good. And then for the ticketing for the event, are you planning on putting those funds back into the event, or?
Yeah, we'll be using.
Okay, so then that would be like extra.
Yes.
And can we go back to that slide for a second? I saw a note. What does it mean only applicable for Taiwan? Oh, like only for the event?
For the event, I forgot to type Taiwan name. Sorry, I was like,
Anyway, that was my only question for you.
Senator Ramirez-Pineda.
I was gonna go ahead and make the motion and then the discussion needs to happen afterwards. I move to authorize spending from surplus to group Taiwanese Student Association, OS number 023, in the amount of 1,760 to existing line item recruitment and retention programming, and 17,820 to existing line item name Taiwan.
Motion made by Ramirez-Pineda, seconded Esbeck.
Did I need to say the total? Like in grant?
Did you make them both? Did you make the surplus or both? Like you combine them, right?
Yes, I combined them into one motion. I just didn't say.
Yeah. You want to amend your motion?
Yeah. I move to amend my motion to should I say it from I move to authorize spending from surplus group Taiwanese Student Association OS number 023 in the amount of 1,760 to existing line item name recruitment and retention programming, and 17,820 to existing line item name Taiwan in a grand total of $19,580.
Second.
Motion made by Ramirez-Pineda, seconded Esbeck. Is there any other discussion? Peters.
Aye.
Lopez. Aye. Muhammad.
Aye.
Rowe. Aye. Potter.
Aye.
Meyer.
Aye.
Moreno.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Withers.
Abstain.
Ramirez-Pineda.
Aye.
Wu. Esbeck. Back to Liv. Stroh.
Aye.
Dillon.
Aye.
Ludeman.
Aye.
Bauman.
Aye.
Ducharme.
Aye.
Jenkins Hiscox.
Aye.
Garrett. And I say aye as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on the agenda is Art History Student Association. Is there anyone here to speak on that request? Art History Student Association. Madam Moreno.
To table the request from art history students as salary for years.
Motion made by Moreno, seconded Withers. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Other? Motion. Table maps. Oh, come on, you came in right on, Al, you came in right in time. What is that?
Heard a presentation.
So MAPS is requesting 8,500
for our annual pre-health event that is in collaboration with several other pre-health clubs around campus. So Med Advance it's going to be our third annual event. So what is Med Advance? Med Advance is a networking professional development conference hosted by MAPS. Students will have the opportunity to connect with faculty, physicians, and other students around the Eugene area. I know a lot of students that have actually been able to shadow or get volunteer opportunities through Med Advance. And also we will have hands-on workshops for students to be able to experience have like clinical experience such as suturing workshops, how to administer Narcan, how to do EEGs and all that. So in previous years, we usually have around 120 people attend. Catering in 2023 was around 5,000, bumped it down to 3,700 last year. And so total cost usually is around $5,000. So I didn't know that. And so I got the stars, and as you can see, it was a little much, and I was told to bring it down. And so currently the catering cost is $3,600, and it's one meal for including beverages, setup, tear down, and the tablecloths and all that. And then we have the biomarkers material, which is for another workshop at Med Advance, where students are able to kind of take like fingerprints of each other and see like blood glucose, lipids, whenever you donate blood, you know how they kind of prick your finger and are like, how much iron do you have, that kind of thing. We're able to practice on other students. And one of the workshops is that. And it's hosted by Josh, which is our faculty advisor and a researcher here at the above. And so normally in previous years, he's been the one supplying it, and he's been spending his own money out of pocket to provide us for this. And also I'd like to mention that the 4,600 includes supplies for Day Salute, which is our other volunteering event where we go out and also give run these tests for people. It's like a free health clinic where we run these tests for people who need it. And so, yeah. And so this is how we kind of lower the cost for the biomarker material so much. So for Med Advance, we're going to be combining the lipid and glucose testing. Because these are just for students and this is just for practice, it's not really necessary for us to get as accurate of tests for them. We are still keeping the lipid panels and the glucose separately for Day Salute, as these are for people who actually need it. And we're changing the A1C testing to only those who need it, and that's only going to be for Day Salute. So basically for Med Advance, we're just doing the bare minimum for what we need, and then for Day Salute, we're keeping what we've usually done in previous years. And so the total cost breakdown is $8,500 for catering and for the biomarker material. Like I said, I'd like to mention that in previous years, when we ask for money for Med Advance, we don't include the biomarker materials for Day Salute and Med Advance, so that's why the biomarker materials is a little bit more.
Senator Scrum.
Hi, thanks so much for being here and giving that presentation. This is for you guys, but also Senate. Did you guys come just like maybe a month or two ago and request something similar for this same event?
No, I think you're thinking of AMEC, which is another pre-health conference that we don't hold, but we're going to.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, So you haven't come in and request money for this event yet before?
No.
I was just looking and I saw your stuff for AMEC, but I could have sworn that we also.
Yeah, we talked about it whenever I
Did you
was.
just come back? Did we
Yeah.
say adjust the cost and come back? Okay, I'm like, I swear to God, we heard this presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, and you've cut costs since then, so super appreciate it. I just wanted to clarify, make sure I wasn't crazy. Thank you. I yield.
I remember talking to you this week, and I appreciate how much you're able to kind of like review the costs and look for places that could be adjusted. I just have one question. So for the biomarker materials, you said some of them will be used for Dia de Salud, and then are any of those like reusable for like future events as well, or is it kind of something that you have to like repurchase?
Yeah, unfortunately, they're not reusable because they are like actually taking people's blood, so we're not able to reuse
Yeah,
that.
I wasn't sure if there was like a part of it that like I don't really know how that works, but anyway, thank you. I feel.
Senator Ramirez Banana.
And then we can discuss afterwards. I moved to authorize spending from surplus to group maps, OS number 207I in the amount of 8,600 to existing line item name benefits.
Second.
Motion made by Ramirez Banana. Discussion. Vote. Peters.
Aye.
Lopez. Aye. Mohammed. Aye. Bo.
Aye.
Potter.
Aye.
Meyer. Aye. Morena.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Withers.
Aye.
Ramirez Banana.
Aye.
Wu.
Aye.
Esbeck.
Aye.
Agdalena.
Aye.
Scro.
Aye.
Dillon.
Aye.
Ludeman.
Aye.
Bauman.
Aye.
Ducharme.
Aye.
Jenkins Iscott.
Aye.
Garrity.
Aye.
And I say aye as well. All right, Vietnamese Student Association.
Yeah, and now I literally just got through that.
Hello. I'm Quinn. I'm the Internal Affairs Coordinator for the Vietnamese Student Association, and I'm requesting $8,000. $6,000 will go to our retreat. During the time that I submitted the form, we didn't have the intent to travel approved, but now it's been approved. But the retreat will be held on May 24th to the 26th. And it will be at Camp Cedar Ridge, so that's an ASUO approved retreat site, and that will go for our food and lodging for that. And the other $2,000 is to help with our catering costs for our annual culture show coming up on May 3rd at the Union Ballroom. And this is just to sort of to plus our budget a bit more, because when we had to request and rent dance rooms, request a performer, and buy costumes for our performances. The costs were a bit more than what we were expecting, and so this $2,000 is just to make sure that we have everything by the deadline.
Okay, awesome, thanks, Rick.
Hi, I just wanted to say that the reason why they're priced so high for booking rooms is because they make extra sure to book really nice rooms with mirrors. Also, you should go to Culture Show on May 3rd. I'm practicing in it. It's great. You really should come. And so just practicing within this org, I can see their attention to detail with buying rooms that have great mirrors, which is why the cost is a little bit a little bit more. And with that in mind, I would like to do the photo shoot. And if anyone wants to, it's so creative, but I move to authorize spending from surplus to Group Vietnamese Student Association, OS number to I in the amount of 2,000 to existing line item culture events and 6,000 to new line item new retreat for a grand total of $8,000.
Second. Motion made by Ruben, second by Benz, discussion.
Hi, thank you for coming. Kind of like a two-sided question. First, how many people will be going on the retreat? And then, how are you deciding who gets to go?
So we're gonna have around 40 members go to retreat. And all UO students are open, but we're going to choose based off of attendance for our club.
And what's like your average attendance?
We have around 30 to 40 members per club meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, I yield.
Senator Williams.
I don't know if you said this, but how many days is it?
Repeat that.
How many days is it again?
It'll be 3 days, 2 nights from the 25th.
Thank you so much. I yield.
Any other discussion? Okay. We will vote. Peters.
Aye.
Lopez. Aye. Muhammad. Vote. Potter.
Aye.
Pine. Aye. Moreno.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Withers.
Aye.
Ramirez Pineda.
Aye.
Move. Esbeck. Aye. Kalina.
Aye.
Scruff.
Aye.
Dillon.
Aye.
Luda.
Aye.
Tom. Ducharme.
Aye.
Jenkins Hiscox.
Aye.
Garrity. And I say aye as well. Have a good event. Right. Next, the ASUO Senate. Okay. You want to come on up, David? Good.
What?
Yeah. I'm gonna. Okay, no, we can do this together from over here. Does that work? Okay. It works for me. Okay, this event, I'm gonna have David speak a little bit more on it. It's a little short. I'm gonna have David help me speak on this, but David came to me a few weeks ago, and was talking about sort of a campus beautification project he was working on. It sounded really, really interesting. And so sort of collaborating on that. I'll let you take it away, David.
That sounds good. So, as you all know, President Schultz in his strategic plan said that he wants to bring flourishing to this campus. And so, as a student leader, yes, I'm sorry I used that word, my apologies. But as a leader on this campus, I thought, what makes me flourish? And it's such and so that's a very kind of hard question to answer because it's such an abstract content. I like words. But what I realized is no matter what space I'm in, when there's art in that space, that helps me thrive. And so I try to think of what is the best way to do more art on campus. And I was talking to a good friend of mine who goes down to school in California. And what his campus does is they have a system where students can apply to the student government and propose a mural that they're going to paint. And then the student government pays for the materials, so the paint and like any scaffolding and what they need to support that student to paint a mural. And I was like, what a great idea. This is such a good way to use surplus money. So I talked with, first I had to figure out who I needed to get approval for to get art on campus. And so I realized all the exterior of the campus is controlled by the campus planning committee, which is a very, as anyone who's interacted with them, very bureaucratic, very hard to get through committee. And so I said, what are some alternatives that I can go through first to have a proof of concept? And I realized I work in housing, that's why I'm wearing my badge. And I work in capital construction, which is the department that oversees the building of all the new dorms. And what I realized is housing, while they don't control the exterior of the buildings, they control the interior. And so I knew that the approval that I would need is the very people that I work with. And so I talked with them, I proposed the idea to them. They're very open. This is something that they've actually been trying to do for a long time, which is bring more art in. And so once I got that approval, I talked to Tariq and I said, is this something that Senate might be willing to take a look at? And he thought it was a wonderful idea. And here we are. So basically, like I mentioned, this is a pilot program. I'm asking for $15,000. I don't anticipate us using all of those funds, but that gives us enough leeway to give students. So basically how it works is you guys will send up call to artists asking for people to propose murals. They're gonna get a rough order of magnitude, basically saying, this is what I'm gonna do, this is how big it is, this is how much it's gonna cost. And so then you guys are gonna get to select which murals you like and don't like, and then pass that on to housing, who's then gonna review that and say, okay, these are the final ones. And then once we have final selections of murals, Capcom, which is the housing department, will do a sanity check just to be like, yep, they gave us the estimate. This is how much they say this cost, and this is how much we think is true or not, figuring out just to make sure that we don't go over budget. And then once that goes, that's when the money actually gets spent. We go to ASUO, say, this is the plan, this is the timeline, we have final approval, we give us final approval, and yeah, then the mural can be painted by the student. I provided Talib with a very detailed description of everything that I just said in much more depth and detail, as long with workflows that kind of visualize it. So I believe, was that sent out?
It's attached to the engage form, and I'll make sure that it's sent in.
So that will give you a lot more ideas on what this is. But yeah, I'm here to answer any questions.
And as you all know, $50,000 I heard from another senator is a lot of money for a mural, but I will say that, as David said, if it doesn't all get used, of course, it will get swept back to surplus by first or the last day of June, so we can turn into. I saw a lot of placards.
Okay, this sounds pretty cool. So these murals, could they be anywhere?
So no, I'm working with, like I said, first off, the first place is it has to be an interior space within housing. That's what we have approval for. And I'm currently working with housing to figure out specific locations. We're basically looking for what is publicly accessible, because you don't want something that's just in a dorm that you have to be a resident of that dorm to access. So public accessibility is a big concern. And then other is where we have a couple of legacy buildings. So we don't want to be anywhere near asbestos or anything like that. So making sure that none of the spaces are like that. And then third is taking into account some floors, for example, if you want a scissor lift, they don't support that weight, so you can't have anything high up, or you need to install some type of scaffolding. So those are the evaluations. So the plan is that housing will provide a list of 3 or 4 spaces that artists can then choose which they want to paint.
Well, and then I know you're saying like individual students would submit it. Would there be like an option for people to make teams? Because I know murals are quite big.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see why not. And like I said, you guys would be overseeing that selection process, so you would have complete jurisdiction on who does that.
Sweet. Thank you so much. And then one more thing, this is kind of random, it's something I just thought of. Might be a good idea, might be a bad idea. Low-key, if you can get anything through campus planning, what about a graffiti wall?
I'd be interested, and like I mentioned, the plan is to go to the campus planning committee, but I want to do this first as a proof of concept, so then when we go to them, they can't just say, oh, this is never going to work, because we show them. And so, and I'm definitely, something that I would like to do is a big community mural. And so, getting a lot of students involved in painting. I know California is going to be up, so one of the things that I had was maybe potentially even engaging with the Native American community to have. And I talked to Tira about this. I talked to Tira about this like idea, but that is way in the future. But I think that would be cool. But there's definitely this is just the first step, and once we successfully do this, the opportunities are endless.
Oh, sounds awesome. I yield. Thanks.
Yeah, and Lorraine, I would suggest also, I know we have some folks in here on CPC as well, so I'm sure we can relay any of those future projects to them. Fisher.
Hi, David. I like this idea. We can make our campus more beautiful. I just have a few questions. The first is that, is this request just for like one mural, or is this could this possibly fund multiple?
Yeah, so the goal is 2, depending on how much, so we're aiming for 3 spaces, so we're not gonna have any more than 3 murals, but aim is 2, potentially 3 if we can agree on that. But I mean, if you guys are willing to give it, I'm gonna gun for as many murals as possible, so that's the end goal.
For sure. And then the actual funding is just to pay for supplies and stuff. It's not to compensate artists or.
Correct. So it's gonna be for the supplies plus housing preparing the space, so if there's any binder that needs to be painted, housing will take care of that. They're also gonna put like paper on the carpet to make sure that the mural doesn't damage or anything like that, so that simply in the cost. And then there's 10% of the full budget is saved for risk management, so if the artwork gets damaged, you have funds to pull from to repair. So that's also.
That's great, thank you so much, I know.
Senator Redmond.
That's exactly.
Lou.
My question was answered, but I do want to know about CPC, just like from the committee. It's like you said, it's just like, unless it is on the exterior, I don't think that they would really cover that. I don't think it would take as long though, compared to other projects, just because they don't really have to do like any of the design plans or whatever your order they like to go through. But also Emily Ang, who's the senior planner for CPC, also does interiors. So I don't know if you talked to her, but.
I haven't, like I said, I kept this mostly internal, but I'm sure once we get to the step of talking to CPC.
Then that could also be an option.
Yeah, I'm assuming they oversee the interior of the learning halls, not instead of the dorms. But
CPC for CPC?
yeah, I'm just I'm not.
I don't know,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure it's exteriors are just, they do housing too, but they don't do,
Only the exterior.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Lou, sorry.
My question was answered, I know.
This might be a tedious question, but kind of thinking through the like selection process and things, would we have to create like a committee or anything to like oversee who's applying? Like, are there any like sort of that, or is it just kind of like they would come and present to all of Senate, and then we would choose that way, or is it more of a committee like work?
So in the papers that I sent you guys, it outlines a process that you guys created a committee, because I just thought that would be the most effective use of your guys' time. But again, you have complete overview of how you select. So if you want to have all of Senate involved, then that's your prerogative.
So then in the motion being made, it would be one, sorry, right, because, yeah, so one would be for the 15,000, and then another one would be to create a committee for it.
Well,
Religious.
the committee can be formed, my initial thought was the committee can be formed and the committee can send a recommendation to Senate on the pieces it was, that way that we can still, there's still representation on the whole thing. But we can create the committee after we've authorized.
Okay, I didn't know if it was like a working group where you had to, okay, great, thank you, I am.
Senator Ducharme.
Hi, I have a procedural question, which is, how does this going to interact with the July 1st end of the fiscal year? Like a lot of the orgs that come to us have like similarly as good plans as the one that you attached, the workflow report, but do you expect to be able to fund a mural completely by the end of the fiscal year? Is this money going to need to be reallocated come July 2nd? Yeah.
Currently, the plan is to have this done by spring.
And a follow-up thought to that would be, if this is something that ASUO wanted to continue funding, these sorts of projects, hopefully it can be built into either SEC's budget or Senate's budget, to be able to continue this good work if that's what the future Senate so chooses. As David said, this is sort of a pilot project at this point.
So you expect this to work? You expect to be able to finish this project by the end of spring term?
Correct. I already, like I said, I've been working with housing. So we just finished the document that outlines exactly what spaces that we're offering for students to paint on, which includes elevation plans, the amount of lighting that it's received, as well as any limitations that I mentioned. And then the initial contract, which is the facilities use agreement, which basically is going to outline that ASUO is the owner of the artwork, but they're using, housing spaces, and so that just outlines liability and what happens if the artwork is damaged. We just procedural, so that's all already done and taken care of. So the moment this money is allocated, we're ready to move and go into the project. And knowing I have a coworker that's in the School of Art and Design, and he said that whenever they have a call from artists, they're pretty receptive. So I think assuming that Senate can move as fast as housing, we should have no trouble to do this by the end of the term. And that's, at least on housing's end, with all their bureaucracy, I've time and time again told them that this is something that's gonna happen now and soon. So they're
Okay. Well, thank you for going through all that bureaucratic legwork. Good luck and Godspeed. I yield.
I hope Senate can move faster than housing.
I don't think I'd ever hear that. Please.
Gary.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to David's point earlier about working with the Native American community, as we so endearingly call it. Just kidding. We did have a conversation a few weeks ago about that, and one idea that we did have was, yes, once Calabria is, I don't know if this would happen sooner or later, but once Calabria is reopened, then we could use some of these funds to create a mural there, and this would create an opportunity for the Nazark to be able to kind of reclaim Calabria as a space, because it's one of only, I believe, 3 spaces on campus that is directly, that is intentionally for Native students, for Indigenous students, so kind of a reclamation project. And also, just a point is that I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that Senate has really done anything this year to uphold or protect the PAL resolution besides a few people signing up for volunteers, and this would be the one way to fulfill it. I've seen exec do some legwork, but I have not seen anything from Senate, so I would implore you, if you're supporting multicultural orgs, to do that.
Thank you for saying that much more eloquently.
So any other discussion? Questions for David? Thank you, David. Of course. The name of the org is ASUO Senate.
Authorize spending from surplus to group ASUO Senate OS number OS 086 in the amount of 15,000 to new line item name flourishing by art workflow.
Second, Screw.
Motion made by Lumen Screw. Is there any discussion?
Can you make it just flourishing by art, not flourishing by art workflow? That the work.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you want to amend your motion?
I move to amend my motion. I move to authorize spending from surplus to group ASUO Senate OS number OS 086 in the amount of 15,000 to new line item name flourishing by art.
Second, Screw.
Motion made by Lumen, second Screw. Is there any discussion? Peters.
Aye.
Lopez. Aye. Muhammad. Bowen.
Aye.
Potter.
Aye.
Meyer. Aye. Moreno.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Withers.
Aye.
Ramirez Benitez.
Aye.
Esmond. Magdalene.
Aye.
Screw.
Aye.
Dillon.
Aye.
Luna. Bowden.
Aye.
Ducharme.
Aye.
Jenkins is Cummings.
Aye.
Barry. I say aye as well. I want you to know the flourishing counter was 6.
I could have been worse.
Thank you, David.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah, let me know when the committee's formed and we can.
Yes, you gotta be in touch. Teams. Okay, ASUO exec, Director Morgan.
I don't.
Howdy.
What's up with David?
Okay, I'm here to request a line item for payroll. I apologize about my engage mission. Didn't realize that you all were looking at it so deeply, so I apologize, it's kind of brief. But if you have any questions, it's simply, we would like to be able to pay students directly from our ICE fund. And we need a line item for that, so. Any questions? You have the money as well that I transfer after, so we're not missing.
And Luna.
Wait, sorry. So, sorry, I'm not seeing the detail. So, there are like specifics, like who are you paying? You know?
Yeah, so we are trying to pay student bands for our upcoming Spring Fest, and we're just doing this because we think it would just be easier to directly pay them instead of going through an agency. And we have the funds, so we would just like to pay them ourselves.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. I yield.
Any other questions? Motions? Anything else? Strong.
I move to approve the creation, okay, cool. Yeah, I guess I move to approve the creation of new line item labeled payroll for ASUO Senate ASUO Senate, or ASUO exec.
Second, OS Panetta's.
Oh, what's the OS number? I didn't look at it. 5. Let me redo it. I moved to amend my motion. I did it backwards. Sorry.
Can you start just from
I move to approve the creation of new line item labeled payroll for group ASUO executive OS number OS035I.
Second, OS Panetta.
Motion made by Scro, seconded Ramirez Panetta. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Other? The motion is adopted. Congratulations.
That was my first time.
And it wasn't even so close.
I know. Okay, wait. I have to go. Like that. Okay.
I just.
I'll see you tomorrow. Toodles.
All right. No, I'm.
Yeah, you're quick enough.
Me too. Okay. I'm gonna give a little report on sort of where surplus has gone, where we are, and what it's been spent on since July 1st. Go to the next slide. And a big shout out to Sam Torres from Softs putting this together. Great guy. Okay. Go over some terms real quick. Surplus, you should all know what that is. IFAN, Incidental Fee Action Memo. That's the document that Priscilla sends after every Senate meeting that says, Softs, hey, this is the actual amount of money that needs to go to this org. And then accrued expenditures, AD. Next slide. Okay. Okay, I think if you advance something will. Perfect. Okay. The beginning balance of surplus. It was $1,445,246. Now we are at $438,000. That's what we were at last week when we started Senate. So between now and then, we spent a couple of dollars more than that. If I were to assume, I would probably say somewhere in the ballpark of $390. In 8 months, yes, thank you. Okay, go through this. So the total disbursement so far has been $1.1 million, 78% of Senate year to date. Out of curiosity, does anyone want to take a guess about how much has been spent on travel out of this number here? Travel. Under
580,000.
Under Withers.
800,000.
Go to the next slide. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll find out later. So this is the amount of orgs we served, 82. Yes, Senate being the most. This is the most we've given to one org because of the co-op money that we gave at the beginning over the summer, right, to make up for that. Okay. Then I just want to make one other thing. We Senate before, other than that co-op money, only spent $8,000. But only got $8,000 for the events, and I think there was supplemental money. Hawaii was 2, Osaka, Line, and Latino Law Student Association. Purpose of surplus disbursement. Here's the next one. That's kind of intuitive. Okay. So the travel. So travel just under $1 million. Yeah, if you go to the next one, it's
It's under $500,000.
Sorry, under $500,000. This, so again, Senator Ramirez.
Why was travel different than retreat?
If you go back, travel is like,
Flight costs?
Yeah, this was flight, this was hotels, and then retreat was sort of, some of the lodging was built in. Some of the retreats were called retreats, but they were here on campus. And then events was just the second administrative cost, printing, apparel, and retreat. Slide, please. This shows the top 20 disbursements over of all the orgs. Again, you can sort of remove Senate from that first one because they only got a little less than $8,000 from that. But it's just a nice visualization of how much each went to the top 20. Next slide. The number of disbursements. So this is how many times an org came to Senate. Only 46 of them came one time. 25 of them came twice, 5 came 3 times, 4 times, and 2 came 5 times. 46 or yes, there we go. Add team and move court came the most, and then it was NLG, maps, dex, and ASUO exec, and you can actually add exec and maps to that. Yes, okay, this is the breakdown that I was sort of explaining a little earlier. Senate of how Senate spent its budget that it got. This is execs, 16,000 on travel, 15,000 on administrative, and 2,000 on events. This is the disbursement. So when we, here, if you'll go through to that last yellow box is open. So this is over the summer. This is how we've spent money. So between July and September, I think is what that says, we spent between July and August, we spent about $224,000 in that meeting. I will remind you, we met 5 times over the summer. So you can see at one meeting, we sort of had a big increase. But I wanted to share this with you because I think this shows something really important, is that at the beginning of each term and the end of each term, you can see spending increase. And you can actually see there, the middle of which term kind of stayed pretty consistent. And then we spent $117,000 in one meeting. But I think this is helpful for predictions when sort of anticipate when conferences and travel and things are coming, or when orgs realize, oh wait, we have a little bit of money, we want to host an event and get some supplemental funding for that. So this is a nice visualization of how we can sort of expect Senate to go. And I will say I'm going to provide this slideshow to the next Senate because I think it's important for them to have this understanding. This is something that we're going to put together at the end of our quarterly. It's going to be made public on the website. It's going to be printed out in the suite. But it's just, this is a really good show of sort of how and when money is spent. You go to the next slide. Yes, travel question. So that's how many orgs travel. This is the cost. I think there's 5 of them. You go through. Yes, so you can see 40,000 being the largest, 30,000 being the least at the top. Total travel disbursement, $495,000. 43% of Senate's total budget. Surplus, total surplus this year. This is the number of students that travel. And 1.6 of them all students at U of O. And this was the average travel disbursement per student. Senator Williams?
That's exactly my question.
Oh, okay, yeah. Any questions on this slide? I know I'm kind of going through it quickly. I'll make sure that this is provided for you so you can go through it okay. This is travel disbursements by the orgs themselves. So you can see, I guess it's pretty self-explanatory, but the total disbursement will be the green and the yellow will be the travel disbursement. So it kind of is consistent across the majority of the orgs, I would say. Next slide. This is the same, just in a different format. Okay, that's the end of it. That's just for That's just sort of the visual, because I know we can see the number go from 1.4 million to what we have now, and it's hard to know where it went, but I think it's important to travel. Senator Strong.
You have no idea how much I appreciate this, so I'm gonna give Sam a big ol' hug next time I see him. But thank you for doing this. I wanted to ask, as someone I personally have felt, so I've been grappling so hard, I would say the last 2 months of like, we're doing such good work and I want to go and support all these student orgs, but I'm so worried that we've been running out of surplus and that we won't have surplus to go and fund orgs at the beginning of the term. And I'm like, is that fiscally irresponsible of us? So that's what I really like. My question is more so for you. I want to just know your personal opinion. I loved that the chart is, you can predict kind of the patterns of that. That makes me feel so much better. And that it's not just like going and approving everything. But I do want to know your personal take. Are you at all concerned? And if so, what are some next steps you advise us all to go and do and act on and advertise to student orgs, especially going through the last term, you know?
Yeah, and I certainly yield to anyone from PFC who wants to correct me on this. I think something that's important to remember is that surplus started at 1.4 million and it's not going to be anywhere near that when the fiscal year starts. PFC did its job last year in terms of allocating budgets. And so it seems that most of the orgs will have probably spent most of their budget. Some have obviously come back for supplemental funding because they don't have enough. So I'm not sure, the prediction is not out yet, especially with enrollment, but we don't really know how much we're going to get. I think making sure that it's kind of hard at this point because this is kind of up to the next senator, making sure those financial priorities that you guys worked really hard on that are excellent are established
from the get-go,
probably before they go on summer break, to give boards notice on what it's going to look like, especially because surplus is going to be so low, and that's going to have to last you 9 months, or 12 months from May. And so certainly knowing that, we spent $1.1 million in 8 months. So keeping that in mind certainly is most important, but also having guidelines on travel and making sure that orgs know that, or I guess I don't know how that will feel, but knowing that travel is expensive and it's not getting any cheaper, and so finding ways to be able to mitigate those.
So I want to reiterate, just like for a little bit clarity's sake, that we're going to be operating the rest of the year at the pace that we've been operating on, correct? And now we're just leaving it up to next year's Senate to deal with financial priorities because there's not much equality-wise that we can do in establishing different financial rules, correct?
That's entirely up to you all, how we operate. I mean, I'm sort of.
I guess it's an opinion for everyone too.
Yeah, I'm sort of going off of personally for me. I mean, we're all each individually one vote, but I think the financial priorities are just excellent in following it to the best of our ability, especially in terms of what we told the boards we're going to follow. I don't know if that makes sense.
I feel like every time the financial priorities are referenced in Senate, it's frequently overlooked or justified based off of the good work that students are doing or another point that things are going for. So that's where a lot of my frustration comes in. But It's also frustrating because I do want to give them money, but it seems like the financial priorities should not be followed at this point or aren't being, just because they aren't being followed, because we're giving justification for so much going on. I do want to hear a lot about what PFC also has to say on that.
Oh, I actually wasn't going to speak, but I can speak. I mean,
I actually really want to hear your take on this.
My take on it is, as an ASUO leader, my biggest thing, I remember specifically there was a point last year after the Protect the Power resolution where my co-director and I, Zach, had to come to Senate and we had to ask for surplus to be able to rent out a MacArthur Court. We have to rent out MacArthur Court to be able to hold powwow. If we didn't, then we wouldn't have powwow. Because where would we do it? In the longhouse? Not going to put enough people. And Zach and I had really, emphasis on really, pushed it off until the last minute because one, we had just done the Protect the Power resolution. Two was that up until that point, our entire idea of Senate was that they would withhold money from us as much as they could because our understanding was that they were incredibly frugal to their own benefit. And so it even got to the point where when we were up here, and I mean, I'm sure that Talik and Robbie remember, and I still have the presentation, when we were up there standing at that microphone, we told them like, the reality of what we need is like $7,600, but we're here asking you for $5,000 because we might be able to make up the 2,000 deficit. And I remember every single senator just being like, why would you do that? Like, why wouldn't you just ask for what you need? And I mean, like, we told them, really, because we don't believe that this is a place, this is a space that we can come and ask for money and ask what we need and ask for the resources that we are like going to die if we don't operate with them, you know? And I think that I'm saying this to you, Liz, because I love you and you know that I love you. I'm saying this with the best of intentions. I think saying that we're not following financial priorities is a little bit of a step. I have been like raised to really, really, really like take a look at the people around me and understand where they're coming from. And you know that I'm not saying that you're not doing this because I know you personally.
Yeah, I want to understand what you're. Yeah.
I've been like raised to look around people and like understand where they're coming from and literally like break my back to help them. Like when I was in 4th grade, my mom would like take me out of school and like make me skip my school days to go like pack lunch bags for people who didn't have great access to food or basic needs. And so all of that like being combined, like I feel it is my duty to be able to provide these orgs to like the best funding that we are capable of, because the reality is like this is probably one of the few times that they're going to be able to rely on different sources of funding to like actually take and like grab a hold of these opportunities. Like I am so fortunate in my finances that I don't have to be reliant on that. But I can only imagine like knowing how my mom was when she was in college. Like she was living out of a car with like one of her best friends for like months and months and months and months out of her college career when she was at the University of Utah. And I could literally like not imagine like wanting to help people so much. Like saying no to somebody just because I think that we're not following our financial priorities, and thinking that we need to be more fiscally responsible in our spending. Like I could not imagine like saying no to somebody like even today, like Max, when they were talking about their medical training and all of that. Like I cannot imagine saying no to them because this might be the only time in their college career for a while with, you know, these like resources and these supports like right at the tips of their fingers, you know, that they won't have to pay for it, and like it would be entirely funded by our student body. Like I think really the heart of this conversation is like my personal belief is that these are student dollars and they need to go back to students. I think that the $1.4 million is absolutely disgusting and it should not have been there in the first place. And we should be doing everything we can to give back to our students, because the reality of this job is that we're here as public servants. We're not here to decide and dictate like who gets spending, who gets money, who doesn't get money. We're here to serve the people that come in front of us every single Wednesday. We're here to serve the people who watch the office looking for help. We're here to serve the people who like meet over here standing in line. Like that's our job as public servants, whether or not we're students or whatever. This job is entirely one of public servitude, and that's how we get back is, you know, through philanthropy and whatnot. So those are my thoughts.
Cool. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I genuinely I want to help student orgs. I don't have the experience and attachment to it. That's why I did ask, because I want to hear that when I'm also feeling this like back and forth. So that's ultimately really what I wanted to hear. And I totally agree and support that. So thank you for explaining all that. Yeah, I know we have a lot to go through.
And I was going to say, I saw Bauman and then Fisher, or sorry, Bauman and then
This is actually why I picked up the mic. Ludeman and Bauman.
Okay. I want to say one of the things that, spending $500,000 on travel, I'm not saying it's inherently. That means we invested money, just like Tara said, back into students. We gave students the opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. We expanded accessibility, travel, and to let people see things, experience things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. So I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that is giving other students the opportunity to possibly change their lives. So, literally.
I have a couple things. First, I was just curious if like anyone who's I guess like been on the Senate for longer, just like more familiar with like financials, like if there's any kind of estimate of like what we what could come back from surplus at the end of the year. I'm kind of expecting though, like half of what we had last year though, once we reached it, like, I don't know how much that can, but like 300, I don't know what that looks like. And I'm expecting a drastic difference, I guess, than what we had this year.
From the conversations that I've been hearing and having with Becky and Softs and what we're seeing is anywhere in the ballpark between 200,000 and maybe 300,000.
Yeah, I think
starting next year, sorry.
Like, in addition to whatever we have left, which depending.
And I would say that's a pretty, I wouldn't say that's a conservative.
A good what? A good
Like
service?
I'm saying, no, conservative, so like I'm saying, that's pretty, I would say that would be kind of.
Overestimating what we're getting back, okay, yeah. I know this probably doesn't like affect most people here that are not like returning in Senate, but I think it is good to like be conscious of that, just because like we will have to reanalyze those priorities drastically for next year if we want to effectively help as many orgs as we can throughout the year. Like if we're looking at like 500K, like we can't be funding like 50,000 trips because that is a large portion of our entire budget. And again, I know this isn't like an essential topic right now, but just as someone that like is staying on next year, that it does worry me a little bit because I think a lot of the time too, like orgs expect things that have happened in the past. And I think this is something that we just would have to be really transparent about from the beginning, that like we're starting with like $1 million left or however much. But just kind of making that like aware that like we will have to use our money very differently next year. And I don't think it's a bad thing that we've been using our money. I think that's great, but I just like think that will be that's a transition that is coming in the next years.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're just gonna have to do a lot of communicating, but also try to just make sure that everyone gets what they need, no matter how much is there, best for our ability. My question was more along the lines of when it comes to travel, specifically air travel. I know that kind of in sort of the whole immigration thing, like one of the things that I've just read news stories about is is the sort of the use of airports as like places to kind of catch people out, specifically people coming. There was like a German professor who got relayed by ICE at an airport, was kept there for however long. With travel, are we going to have like any, I know this is kind of like a next year thing, but like do we want to potentially like look into that, figure out if there's like a ratings for like the safety of different airports, something like do we have things?
Yeah, I think that's certainly something we could talk about with probably the next Senate, but also I'm sure that, not to offer up Kevin Reed's time, but the General Counsel's office, or the travel coordinator who is Johanna. I'm sure maybe finding other ways to connect students would certainly be right up their alley, and they would probably know.
Thank you, I yield. Commissioner Potter Patrick. I make a little sound. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Sorry, your windows and then, sure.
Oh, no. In terms of the financial priorities, I just wanted to say that for me personally, I have kind of been doing it on a case-by-case basis for the Senate because it is like a very well-written document and a lot of hard work has gone into it. I do think, like for me personally, I haven't been following it in every situation because a lot of orgs like don't know that we even have financial priorities. Yeah. And so like I think it's like unfair to label them that. And I trust you guys that like in the conversations you're having like with orgs about surplus requests over $1,000, we're like talking about that stuff. But I just would really like to encourage the people that are going to be here next year, like if you have some kind of priorities document, making sure that it's like put out there like as soon as possible. And maybe even like talking to softs about like talking about it with orgs too. And yeah, that's all I want to say. I yield. firstly, to go off of what you just said, I think it's important to note that when we came into these positions, there was no training on how to interact with the boards, especially when they come in to review surplus requests with us. Unless I'm the only one, but I got no training on how to talk to them. I had no idea what we were supposed to do when they came into the office. And I think that's caused a lot of issues. So, I mean, I guess for next year's Senate, a few of us will be there. So we should really make sure that happens. Secondly, to go off what you were saying, Tira, I really appreciate what you said. I think it's very important that we are generous to students and that we, try to provide as best as we can. But to be honest, it was really disturbing to see the numbers on that presentation. The fact that 40% of our funding have gone to less than 2% of students on campus. Like, yes, it is student organizations' money and we should be giving it back to them. But I think we should be distributing it a little bit more fairly, or, because 40% to 2% to 1 point something percent is not a good ratio at all. And I feel like we need to be prioritizing all students, not just 400 students for a huge majority of surplus. I yield.
Yeah, just to add on to that, the full report will be really, it's going to be printed in the office, but I'll show you electronic copies. There was sort of an alarming amount of orgs that were just traveling. I think it was 20 that only their whole budget was used just for traveling. I'm not here to tell any organization, but I think sort of in terms of, we talk about student impact too, sort of like you were listening 1%. So, yeah. Sorry, who's next?
Me. Patrick.
Sorry.
So just keep this short, but my biggest concern is just what happens when surplus is zero, because then it's like, I don't know, like what happens, like what? I don't know.
Excellent question. In front of you, you all have that prudent reserve. And historically, there was, I was trying to remember, I think it was in 2016, 2017, there was sort of a deficit that ASUO had that they had to make up for some money that they took out before they had. And so they were able to use the prudent reserve to be able to make up for the shortfall. There's also the over-realized budget, which is overseen by committee on Senate. Hasn't been formed in a number of years because surplus has been so high. But that what would happen is either the over-realized committee or the prudent reserve could be used. Hopefully, we don't.
Can't unallocate it.
But that can't go to, that has to go to our student
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to say super quickly, I know we're not on Senate, but I'm obviously super front facing with student works, and I did want to say that as we're going into the final organization training requirements of the year, such as like the law school training and spring PCM, which is in 2 weeks, officers such as myself and SGS staff such as Becky and Julie have begun trying to talk to student orgs and kind of just like beginning to share that things are obviously going to look different next year. I think we know that things are going to look different next year, and from my point of view, new officers are already coming into their roles. Like we're holding, officer transition training, we're holding new leader training. So I just want to like recommend that there's no time like the present to like start slowly disseminating this information, whether it's word of mouth or at these types of trainings. It's really important to me, and I believe whoever has my role next year and Senate, that we're not doing anything to like blindside these officers. That's like, oh, we've known since April that Senate that surplus was going to be low. So I just kind of wanted to let you guys know that exec and student engagement and SGS are kind of working on that and kind of just trying to talk to folks as they come into their new roles, that we know that things are going to look different. So, how can we best prepare you so that people don't show up in September and October being like, oh, what? Like surplus is a third of what it was last year. Like we're just finding this out. So I just wanted to, if you have any input or thoughts about what you think should be shared at these trainings with these new officers, like I would love to talk about it. But I think that's the best way for us to build trust with these new officers as they come into their roles. We know now, they should also know now. Thanks.
I also say, just adding on to that part of sort of what going back to what Liz said is in your transition documents, when there will be a new Senate elected on Friday. And so when you find out who's going to be taking your seat, make sure that you're having these conversations. Like you have all this information now, make sure that next person does, make sure you're having these conversations. I know as Robbie was transitioning out of the Senate, he had an exceptional training with the Senator as well. But yeah, maybe not 7 hours, but make sure that they have the information.
One, I'm about to send a document that might be old news into the chat that was made by Robbie. It's about ASUO Senate one-time funding meetings 101. So if you don't know how to do a one-time funding meeting yet, take a look at this document. Next is Ramirez Meta, and then I believe that I saw others after that.
My question was kind of on all the graph info. Did it reflect when we amended for unallocated reserve? Because at some point, right, we weren't pulling from unallocated reserve anymore, just surplus. Did that by chance?
I don't believe that was
Okay.
reflected in the presentation.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
So last week was the deadline for orgs to request for travel, right? So
Yeah, I think for boards that are over 10 people, I think we might.
over 10.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully we won't be having any requests made for travel. So I guess that is something we can keep in mind.
And I will say there are a lot of orgs that wait to spend a lot of their budget till the spring. So I know some of those numbers, but it's hard to iron it completely out because like I know African Student Association has its African Night in the spring, and so a lot of orgs wait till the nice weather is out. So that's. Is there any other questions on this presentation? No? Okay.
No. Going back to the unallocated reserve part of it is PFC did suggest that so that in case we did run out of surplus, then that would be a pool of funds that we could use later. And it would also transfer into the next Senate too. So if like we, got down to a crazy amount of surplus funds, then then the next Senate would still have the unallocated reserve to pull from. So that was the intention of that, Robbie.
I have a question about like if we can expect. I know that like return to surplus from orgs happens like on a much more predictable basis than it does from like departments. But I was just wondering for any of the DNC folks if they want to speak on like if we can expect any money back into surplus from departments. I thought I remembered something about that from.
Only from the Holden Center, it's just $9,000, which is required. It's $9,861, which is required. Any other questions?
I know this, I'm not totally sure who is who does communicate this stuff to orgs, like surplus, the surplus priorities, the amount of surplus we have, these guys.
Actually, it seems to be all of our jobs because we all sit on Senate, but PFC is glad to take your word. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for listening, everybody. I believe what's next on it? Nope. Okay, I'll yield my time to Robbie Cullen, who's filling in for Vice President Elected.
Thank you, Jalik.
Yes, thank you. So exec has been underway with a couple new projects and a couple old projects as well. So I spoke a little bit about this last week, but the preliminary stages of the accessibility audit are underway at Earlier in Columbia and Mackenzie Hall. We will know the cost. Yeah, it's good news for sure. And we will know the cost of the housing portion of the audit, which is what ASUO would potentially be helping out for. And I also do think that there's alternative sources of funding than just the prudent reserve or surplus, because ASUO also has the potential to enact the student building fee, which is another potential avenue for funding should that come up when surplus and prudent reserve are low. But if you have more questions about the audit, I'd be more than happy to talk about that. But I've also been working with Mike from Campus Planning and Facilities Management to establish the physical access committee that we're supposed to have anyways, and we'll be in charge of looking over the results of the audit and then making those budget requests to fix ADA issues on campus to the state every 2 years. So that's good. Fiona has been working with the ACLU on signature collection for the Equal Rights for All campaign. I think she spoke about the Equal Rights for All campaign here a little while ago, but essentially it's trying to get a ballot measure on the ballot for the 2026 midterm elections to amend Oregon's constitution to contain protections for things like gender affirming care and IVF. So that's something to keep an eye out for. She'll probably be coming around asking y'all for your signatures very soon, and I would encourage all of you to do so. We've also been working with the Basic Needs Coalition and Partners for Hunger-Free Oregon on a week of action for student basic needs in May, comprised of lobbying on two days in Salem, press releases with a coordinated effort between our comms folks and theirs, as well as a social media campaign. We've also proposed collaborating on this with ASPSU and ASOSU as well, with whom we're already collaborating on our own lobby day. So we're waiting to hear back from them. 2 Know Your Rights sessions are approaching. The one about activism and free speech will be on the 14th of this month, and one on immigration will be on the 22nd of this month. We're also working with our communications department's working on resource drives for Los Angeles, fires and everything, and then Palestine will be taking place in several weeks. Those will be in the ASUO office. It'll be pretty obvious when it's happening, but we'll let you know ahead of time. Fiona is also working to partner with Springfield Eugene Tenants Association to bring them to campus for drop-in sessions on like landlord-tenant law and tenants' rights. Because I'm sure a lot of you have had like negative experience with your leases. These like apartment buildings in Eugene, South Eugene especially, tend to be kind of predatory. And I've even heard instances of them like bribing students who point out their illegal leases with lower rent so they don't say anything. So yeah, keep your eyes on that. Daphne and I are also working on a training, as she mentioned, for new law org leaders, which will be taking place in a couple weeks in the law school. What? Tira is also doing that. Julie is also doing that. And Senator Cole as well. And also our Secretary of Government Relations, Brandon, has also requested that we notify all that Senator James Manning, the Oregon State Senator for this district, is having a town hall meeting tomorrow. It isn't Bethel, so it is kind of far away, but I would encourage people to carpool and show up. Senator Manning is on the Joint Ways and Means Committee, and I would highly encourage people to show up and talk about student basic needs, higher ed funding, because the Ways and Means Committee is incredibly powerful. They are going to make a budget recommendation very soon, and that'll have a pretty large impact for U of O's budget and basic needs funding in general in the state of Oregon for the next 2 years. ASUO is also working on our own town hall, some of our local representatives and some of our congressional members as well, but that's far in advance.
The update on the program's finance committee.
Thank you. I said last week that PFC would be meeting at like 5:20 on Mondays. That is no longer the case. We all looked at our schedules and figured out that we actually cannot meet at that time. So PFC will be having a new meeting time, TBD. End of the year reports are starting this week, and PFC will be going until week 5. So if there are any org leaders that happen to ask you about end of the year reports or PFC spring CAG meetings, just send them our way. For just baseline information, they will be completing the end of the year reports with their TAG officer during their TAG meeting, because this year they are very, 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 very heavily required. Just update and transparency on PFC's end, we will be having 2 pretty big-ish votes on some organizations' stipends. Basically, there were some kerfuffles last year with 2 orgs options. They are both tier 3 organizations. The last PFC passed them as tier 3 option 3 orgs, but they actually need to be option 4. PFC has been discussing this for a while, and we kind of came to the conclusion that we would hear them and decide and vote on as a committee together whether or not they would remain option 3 or if they would be moved to option 4. I don't really want to speak to the committee, but I have a pretty good feeling about it. I think there's also another big stipend situation. Do you want to talk about it, Justin?
No, I was wondering if you just touched care though, but
What?
you just touch on care.
I did not. I touched on NLG and the other one. I guess I'll just touch on KR too, unless like you want to. PFC has another stipend situation going on. We've been living our relationship with business affairs these past few weeks. KR was approved as a tier 3 organization during last year's, like not this year, as in this PFC's budget process, but last year's PFC's budget process. They were approved as a tier 3 organization. But then they never received that money in their stipend line item. And so they requested to have funds dispersed from their stipend line item, and they did have funds dispersed from their stipend line item. And now Business Affairs is trying to make them pay back that money, and so we are currently working with them to make a Senate surplus request of about $600. And PFC is, to put it on everybody's radar, PFC is also working with them to discuss whether or not they would like to make an additional Senate surplus request of about $7,020 so that they would be able to receive the stipends as a tier 3 organization, because that is what they were identified as and approved for during last year's budget process. So I just wanted to put that on everybody's radar, unless there are any questions.
Seeing as chair, CFC is not here, so the CFC
Yeah, we met last Friday. We have a number of updates.
Yes, today Kyle met with the Dean of Students, Jamie Howard, to talk about the forensics, and this is part of the forensics working group work that he's been doing. And he also shared in the forensics working group that Dean Stabile is moving forward with rehousing the program of forensics, and that there are going to be opportunities for forensic students to advocate, but I don't think that they're directly invited to that meeting with the Vice President of Student Life. And we haven't met as a committee yet, so there's no other update unless you have any.
Okay, the University Senate update. Today, the University Senate met. I was able to deliver the update on some of the great things that ASUO is working on. We got to hear an update from the Provost Long, and some sadder news. The Provost shared that the university has lost thus far $3 billion in grant funding. He did mention that some of this funding was being frozen, unfrozen, refrozen, and so it's sort of an evolving situation, which is certainly sad to say. We also got to hear from the Vice President for Student Life, Dr. Chung, and Dean of Students, Jamie Howard, on some of the updates that are going on in student life in terms of like reshuffling. Yes, it's reshuffling going on. And we also got an update from the U.S. Senate President on sort of her gratitude for the university reaching an agreement with United Academics. I can move to unless nobody else knows on this. Chair,
as hopefully most of you know, academic committee had our academic fair last. I would say it was a hugely successful event. We reached hundreds of students. We had 12 dozen donuts that ran out in less than an hour, and we were out there for 4 hours. So lots of engagement, lots of fun activities, resources given out. Personally, I had like a lot of very impactful conversations with students at my table. So thank you for everyone who came and volunteered, helped set up. Thank you to all the amazing academic senators who put hours of work into this event. It was a really great accomplishment, and it was a great day in the sun. And yeah, I'm going to yield to Senator Ducharme for some more updates.
Hey everybody, I have hate leak. I have 2 updates. One that's relatively minor, which is that I went to CFC and we talked about what it would look like to the initial steps of what it would look like to expand rideshare service to Portland. And we're talking with transportation services to get more as to, what that actually entails. The longer update and why I asked to speak at this time is I met with the CAS dean and the associate dean of graduate studies for CAS to discuss budget cuts, across the college. Um, and this meeting was productive but concerning because it was really clear that CAS administration and graduate students are seeing very different realities. Um, CAS believes that they are doing very small, very targeted cuts to the university, whereas graduate students are seeing less summer courses being offered, their like main TA positions being taken away, uh, and lots of overwork. I've talked to somebody that said like, yeah, my like boss just told me like, don't actually grade the assignments. Like you can't do it in time. Just click through like complete, 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 complete. Because there's too much work being assigned to GEs. Um, they didn't really believe me. But that is existing. But I think it's the start of a good conversation to have. The real concerning part, I think, for us here is that their primary justification for these cuts was the new, somewhat new GTFF contract, which raised pay for GEs to levels that allowed them to live in Eugene, and um, and a deal that the university agreed to, right? The university said, "Hey, like we are going to be able to pay for this," and now they're saying, "Oh, actually, we can't pay for it, and it's going to lead to less services and worse teaching and research at the university." And the real scary part about that, is that UAUO just agreed to a new contract, and probably, although this won't, I think, affect CAS and teaching in particular, right? UO Student Workers is going to agree to a new contract, which hopefully will lead to raises. Um, all their arguments apply in the exact same way to these contracts, which suggests real problems for the future. I'm still in discussions with them. I'm going to keep the dialogue going, but it was a little sobering, and I wanted to share. I yield.
Thank you, Senator. Next, we will go to Otter.
I don't have many updates, just please complete all of your office hours, and if you're not going to complete your office hours, please just send me a Teams message and tell me when you're gonna make them up. I accept most excuses, so just Teams me. If I can do, please respond to my messages, that would be really awesome, and oh yeah, just Teams me when you miss Senate too. Thanks, I yield.
Treasurer Marin. Okay. It's brief. I think I just wanted to shout out this weekend. Plaque Hacks went to Beaver Hacks. It's incredible. So that's what the big test can do. Anyway. I also want to shout out this week, Women in Business is in New York on their site visit. Additionally, I want to remind you of the date of the banquet. The date is April 28th. That's the Monday. Not next Monday, but the following Monday. Mark your calendars.
Sunday or Monday?
Monday.
Monday.
Thank you. And if you haven't,
Is it 16?
16.
Academic committee.
Hey, so Bella, I didn't do that one. And I will say, please vote for the awards. It's really important. It's 6:30 to 9. I'm being told. So mark your calendars for that day. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun time. Everyone gets a +1. So yes. Also, Brandon sent the information about the lobby day info stuff. Senators, please, we're almost out of here. Brandon sent the info about the lobby day, or the Senator Manning town hall tomorrow. Even if you can't go, I would suggest submitting a question, because you guys know this campus. He's nice. Additionally, lobby day, April 24th. In height, I would encourage you all to go. Maybe I'll be your team lead. Last week I had a conversation with the director of transportation, Dave Reeser, for about an hour and a half talking about parking. It's been something that a lot of students have been talking to me about recently. And something that came out of that conversation was a lot of the times there's no one on campus that coordinates all the events. So sometimes when you have Oregon relays and a softball game and other things going on, there's no one that actually is like, hey, wait, maybe those all shouldn't be on the same day. And so we're trying to work right now with the BPSL to make sure that there is someone that can ensure that, because I know sometimes when students go to park if they live far away, there's incredibly limited park. Or if they can't, if they can't be a permanent holder. So that is something that we're working on right now. Yes, okay, and that's it. And all I'll say is next week I will not be at Senate. I will be away, so I will be available by Teams. So please feel free to reach out to me throughout the week. But yeah, you'll have a new speaker for next week. It's only temporary. I know, okay, that's it. That's all I got. Anyone got approval of the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes from April 2nd, 2025.
Motion made by second, all in favor? Moved. Motion made by Bill, second, all in favor? Other grade, Lieutenant will stand for until next Wednesday, 1 p.m.
Senate meeting.